Imagine a land that predates the Roman Empire, is older than Christianity, and surpasses nearly every other living civilization on Earth. A country that has withstood the military campaigns of Alexander the Great, survived the Mongol invasions, endured the Crusades, colonialism, and revolutions, yet still exists today, speaking the same language, embracing many of the same traditions, and carrying a cultural memory that spans over 5,000 years. This remarkable land is Iran. The history of Iran is not merely the tale of a single people or a solitary epoch. Rather, it is a rich mosaic composed of dynasties, religions, languages, and ideas. This intricate tapestry is so complex and captivating that even specialists dedicate their lives to unraveling its myriad chapters. In this presentation, we will meticulously traverse the entire history of Iran, beginning with the earliest settlements in the Zar Mountains and culminating in the Islamic Revolution and its aftermath. We will delve into the lives of significant figures such as Cyrus the Great and Darius I, explore the grandeur of Persepolis, and discuss the fall of the Achaemenid Empire. Our journey will take us through the Parthians and Sassanids, the Arab conquest, and the emergence of a rich Persian Islamic high culture. We will examine the Mongols and the Timurids, the Safavid dynasty, and the introduction of Shi'ism, the colonial pressures of the 19th century, the pivotal role of Muhammad Mossadegh, the coup of 1953, and the transformative revolution of 1979. This narrative has left indelible marks on every continent and continues to shape global politics today. Iran is also the land that introduced the West to algebra and algorithms, the nation that formulated the first declaration of human rights in ancient history, the birthplace of chess, if not its direct creator, whose exquisite carpets now adorn museums worldwide, and the land that produced poets whose works are cherished across continents. All of this merits a thorough historical examination. Chapter 1. The Beginnings. The earliest civilizations on the Iranian plateau. The Iranian plateau stands as one of the oldest inhabited regions in human history. Archaeological findings indicate human presence in this area for at least 10,000 years, particularly in certain locales such as the Zagros Mountains and the vicinity of Tehran. Some evidence even suggests an earlier habitation. In the Zagros Mountains, we find some of the earliest signs of animal domestication and the cultivation of grains. Sites like Alikosh and Tepegaran reveal transitions that can be dated back to as early as 9000 BC. These epochal shifts from a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle to settled agriculture are what historians refer to as the Neolithic Revolution. The climatic and geographic conditions of the Iranian plateau greatly favored this development, with sufficient rainfall in the mountainous regions, fertile valleys, accessible water sources, and a diverse array of animal and plant life. Among the earliest civilizations of the Near East, which are closely linked to the later history of Iran, the Elamites stand out prominently. The Elamite civilization, centered in the ancient city of Susa, located in present-day southwestern Iran, developed in parallel with the Mesopotamian civilizations of Sumer and Akkad, engaging in vibrant exchanges with them. The Elamites possessed their own written language, a sophisticated administrative structure, and a distinctive artistic tradition. Their language, known as Elamite, remains a linguistic enigma for scholars today, as it is not related to any other known language. One of the most famous inscriptions from antiquity, the trilingual Behistun inscription of Darius I, features Elamite alongside Old Persian and Babylonian, underscoring the significant administrative role that Elamite culture continued to play even centuries after the fall of the independent Elamite kingdom. The history of the Elamites stretches back to approximately 3,200 years before Christ, continuing until their subjugation by the Assyrians in the 7th century before Christ. This timeline makes them one of the longest-lasting political entities in early human history, boasting over 2,000 years of independent political history, longer than the entire duration of the Roman Empire, thus solidifying their status as one of the most enduring political entities of early civilization. In addition to the Elamites, numerous other peoples inhabited the Iranian plateau during the 3rd and 2nd millennia before Christ. Among these were the Kassites, who at times also ruled Babylon, and the Mannai in what is now northwestern Iran. Beginning in the 2nd millennium before Christ, Indo-Iranian tribes from the Eurasian steppes began to migrate into the highlands. These migrants brought with them their languages, deities, and technologies, particularly the domesticated chariot and the riding horse, and they intermixed with the populations already residing in the region. From this blend emerged the peoples who would significantly shape Iranian history, the Medes and the Persians. Chapter 2. The Median Empire, Iran's first great state. The Median Empire is recognized as the first significant Iranian empire in history. The Medes, an Indo-Iranian people who settled in what is now northwestern Iran, began to emerge into the recorded historical narrative from the 8th century before Christ onward. Their capital, Ekbatana, now known as Hamadan, was strategically located in a fertile valley at the foot of the Alvan Mountains and was described by Greek sources as an impressive city characterized by concentric walls painted in various colors. The decisive rise of Median power occurred under King Cyaxares, who was the first Iranian ruler to establish a standing, professionally organized army. He transformed the Medes into a formidable military force and, in a historically significant coalition with the Babylonians, succeeded in dismantling the Assyrian Empire, marking a pivotal moment in the region's history. The Assyrian capital of Nineveh fell in the year 612 before Christ, an event that reshaped the entire power balance of the ancient Near East. At its zenith, the Median Empire extended over vast territories, encompassing significant portions of Anatolia, present-day Iran, and the southern Caucasus. The Medes also engaged in conflicts with the Scythians, nomadic horse-riding peoples from the northern Pontic steppes, who frequently invaded their lands, as well as with the Eorzeans in what is now eastern Anatolia. In this world of incessant military confrontations, a robust Median military monarchy emerged, laying the groundwork for the future Persian Empire. It was a loose conglomerate of vassal states and tributary tribes maintained through military strength and dynastic connections. Among the vassals of the Medes was the Persian tribal principality located in the region of Persis, known today as Fars in southwestern Iran. The Persians acknowledged Median supremacy while simultaneously developing their own political and cultural structures. As the Median Empire weakened due to internal power struggles and unrest, a Persian prince seized the opportunity to rewrite the history of the entire Near East. This prince was Cyrus. Chapter 3. Cyrus the Great and the Foundation of the Achaemenid Empire. Cyrus I, known as Cyrus the Great, stands as one of the most remarkable figures in world history and the founder of the First Persian Empire. He belonged to the Achaemenid dynasty, a Persian noble family that had served as vassals to the Medes. Around the year 550 before Christ, Cyrus defeated his grandfather Astyages, the Median king, in a conflict during which a portion of the Median army reportedly defected to Cyrus. This victory allowed Cyrus not only to take control of the Median Empire, but also to inherit the Median state apparatus and bureaucracy, facilitating a smooth transition of power. In rapid succession, Cyrus expanded his realm. He defeated Croesus, the legendary wealthy king of Lydia in present-day Turkey, and overwhelmed the Ionian Greek cities along the coast of Asia Minor. In the year 539 before Christ, he entered Babylon, then the largest city in the world, almost without a fight. What Cyrus did after the capture of Babylon fundamentally distinguished him from most rulers of his time. He issued a decree allowing the peoples who had been deported by the Babylonians, including the Jews, to return to their homelands. He respected the Babylonian gods and allowed the local clergy to retain their positions. He presented himself not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. This policy was so effective that the Jewish Bible refers to Cyrus as the Lord's anointed. This is an extraordinary accolade for a non-Jew in a Jewish sacred text. Cyrus the Great did not present himself merely as a conqueror. Rather, he portrayed himself as the legitimate successor to the Babylonian kings appointed by the Babylonian god Marduk. This policy of tolerance and inclusion was not only politically astute, but may have stemmed from a genuine conviction, as Cyrus implemented similar strategies across all of the territories he subdued. The Cyrus cylinder, a small clay cylinder inscribed in Akkadian cuneiform, was discovered in Babylon in the year 1879 and now resides in the British Museum. Some historians regard it as an early testament to a human rights policy. Although this interpretation is not without its controversies among scholars, it is noteworthy that Cyrus met his end in Central Asia in the year 533 before Christ during a military campaign. His mausoleum, located in Pasargadae, the first capital of the Achaemenid Empire, remains remarkably well preserved to this day. It consists of a simple stone chamber set upon a stepped base, surrounded by the ruins of the palace complex that Cyrus himself commissioned. This site is considered one of the most poignant historical locations in Iran, set apart by its isolation amidst mountains and imbued with a distinctive dignity. In recognition of its cultural significance, Pasargadae was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2004. Transitioning to the next significant figure in this narrative, we turn to Darius I, also known as Darius the Great, who ascended to the Persian throne in the year 522 before Christ after a brutal civil war. Under his leadership, the empire reached its fullest potential. Darius was primarily an exceptionally skilled administrator and state organizer, perhaps more astute than a military commander, yet equally important in his contributions. His reforms established a state that functioned effectively for generations, grounded in rational principles. He implemented a system of decentralization paired with central oversight, allowing for local autonomy while ensuring overarching loyalty to the empire. Economic integration was achieved through standardized systems. The vast Achaemenid Empire, which stretched from Egypt and Libya in the west to India in the east, encompassed an area many times larger than that of the present-day European Union. Managing such a diverse empire was a remarkable achievement, necessitating the coordination and governance of various languages, religions, legal systems, and cultures. Darius organized the empire into 20 satrapies, each governed by a satrap or provincial governor. Each satrapy was required to pay a fixed tribute and provide military contingents for the imperial forces while enjoying considerable autonomy in their internal administration. This system proved so effective that it later served as a model for Roman provincial administration. To maintain control, Darius established a sophisticated oversight mechanism involving royal inspectors known as the eyes and ears of the king, who monitored the satraps to prevent excessive independence. Darius also introduced a unified currency, the gold daric named after himself, standardized weights and measures, and constructed an extensive network of roads. Central to this network was the Royal Road, a fortified route stretching over 2,700 kilometers from Susa to Sardis, along which couriers could deliver messages in less than a week from one end to the other. This remarkable infrastructure facilitated communication and governance across the sprawling empire, contributing to its stability and cohesion. He also initiated the construction of Persepolis, a magnificent ceremonial capital, which was completed by his son Xerxes and subsequent rulers. Persepolis was not just an ordinary seat of government, it stood as a monumental symbol of Persian power and global dominance. The bas-reliefs that adorn the long staircases and walls depict the envoys of all the peoples of the empire as they present tribute during the New Year festival of Nowruz. This carved stone vision represents a world under Persian rule, What makes these reliefs particularly remarkable is their method of representation. All the delegates are depicted at the same height, each portrayed with equal dignity. Every individual is shown in their unique attire and with their distinct attributes. There is no derogatory depiction of the subjugated peoples, a stark contrast to other ancient representations of imperial power. This is a conscious iconographic program that expresses the Achaemenid ideology of diversity within unity. Darius also sought to expand westward and subjugate Greece. However, he faced a significant defeat in the famous Battle of Marathon against the Athenians in the year 490 before Christ. He died in the year 486 before Christ, before he could launch a new campaign against Greece. His son Xerxes undertook this campaign but also suffered defeats, first at the Battle of Thermopylae, then at Salamis, and finally at Plataea. These Greco-Persian wars shaped the European self-image for centuries and remain one of the most well-known confrontations of antiquity. Chapter 5: Alexander and the End of the Achaemenid Empire. The downfall of the Achaemenid Empire came from an unexpected direction, emerging from the small kingdom of Macedonia in northern Greece. Alexander I of Macedonia, known in history as Alexander the Great, crossed the Hellespont in the year 330 before Christ with an army of approximately 40,000 men, embarking on one of the boldest military campaigns in world history. Within just 3 years, he defeated the vast Persian Empire in 3 decisive battles, at the Granicus in 334, at Issus in 332, and at Gaugamela in 331 before Christ. The last Achaemenid great king, Darius III, was not an ineffective ruler, but he faced an opponent who surpassed him in speed, flexibility, and tactical genius. After each defeat, Darius fled and was ultimately murdered in the year 330 before Christ by his own satrap, Bessus, before Alexander could catch up with him. Alexander ordered the sacking and burning of Persepolis, an act whose precise significance remains a topic of debate to this day. Whether it was a deliberate symbolic act of revenge for the Persian destruction of Athens or a spontaneous drunken decision, as some ancient accounts suggest, cannot be definitively determined. What followed was a brief yet culturally significant period of Hellenistic rule over Iran. Alexander the Great adopted Persian court ceremonies, married a Bactrian princess, and actively promoted the blending of Macedonians and Persians within his administration and military ranks. However, his untimely death in the year 323 before Christ in Babylon shattered his vision of a harmonious Greek-Persian synthesis. Following his demise, his vast empire was divided among his generals, known as the Diadochi. Consequently, Iran came under the control of the Seleucid Empire, a Hellenistic kingdom founded by Seleucus I Nicator, which dominated the region for over a century. The Seleucids introduced Greek city foundations, known as polis, complete with gymnasiums, theaters, and marketplaces, and they infused the Iranian landscape with the Greek language and culture, all while allowing the Persian traditions to coexist rather than be replaced. This cultural hybridization resulted in fascinating byproducts. For instance, the Greco-Bactrian kingdoms in present-day Afghanistan merged Greek coinage with Buddhist iconography, creating a cultural synthesis that continues to intrigue art historians today without displacing the rich Persian heritage. This remarkable hybrid culture featured Greek columnar architecture standing alongside Zoroastrian fire altars, while Greek deities began to adopt Iranian characteristics. Chapter 6 delves into the Parthians, a significant yet often overlooked chapter in Iranian history. The Parthian Empire, which emerged around the mid-3rd century before Christ, successfully expelled the Seleucids from Iran and ruled for nearly 5 centuries, from approximately 247 before Christ to 224 after Christ. Despite existing in the shadow of the more illustrious Achaemenid Empire that preceded it, and the even more resplendent Sasanian Empire that followed, the Parthians wielded a power of world historical significance that altered the course of ancient history. The Parthians were a nomadic cavalry people originating from the steppes east of the Caspian Sea. They took control of Iran and maintained their rule for almost 500 years, becoming the only force capable of confronting the Roman Empire on equal military footing. The Parthian horse archer was feared throughout the ancient world. They possessed a warrior elite known as cataphracts, heavily armored cavalrymen who can be seen as precursors to the medieval knight, alongside a light cavalry of archers whose combination was nearly unbeatable. Their tactics involved a clever maneuver of appearing to flee from the enemy while shooting backward, a skill that demanded exceptional equestrian ability and years of training. This tactic, known as the Parthian shot, often outmatched the heavy Roman legions. In the year 53 before Christ, Parthian forces decisively defeated a Roman army at the Battle of Carrhae, located in modern-day Turkey, under the command of Marcus Licinius Crassus, who was then the wealthiest man in Rome. Crassus himself was killed in battle, and 7 Roman legionary eagles, the most sacred symbols of Roman military power, fell into Parthian hands. The Parthian Empire, in its internal structure, was a conglomerate of semi-autonomous vassal states, each governed by tribal leaders and minor dynasties. This system had both advantages and disadvantages. On one hand, it made the empire resilient against external invasions, as no single capital could solely determine the fate of the entire realm. However, it also impeded economic integration and cultural unity. The Parthians lacked a uniform administrative language and did not possess a systematic bureaucracy like that of the Achaemenids. The Parthian Empire was characterized by its decentralized structure, ruled by tribal chieftains and small dynasties under the nominal supremacy of the great king. This arrangement fortified the empire against foreign attacks, yet it hampered both economic and cultural cohesion. The Parthians inhabited a unique liminal space between the Iranian traditions they preserved and nurtured, and the Hellenistic culture they adopted and adapted. Parthian coins bore Greek inscriptions, Parthian rulers held Greek titles, and Parthian artists created a hybrid craftsmanship that continues to captivate specialists to this day. While the Parthians did not leave behind monumental literary works or grand architectural feats comparable to Persepolis, they ensured the continuity of Iranian civilization through 5 tumultuous centuries, maintaining a distance from the Western world. Chapter 7. The Sassanids, Persia's Second Golden Age. The Sasanian Empire, which succeeded the Parthian Empire in the year 224 after Christ, was, in many respects, the most powerful and culturally rich pre-modern Iranian empire, founded by Ardashir, a prince from the region of Pars, an area also associated with the Achaemenids. The Sasanian Empire programmatically claimed to carry on the legacy of the ancient Persian Empire. Ardashir's son, Shapuruwai, famously defeated the Roman Emperor Valerian in the Battle of Edessa in the year 253 after Christ, capturing him as the first and only Roman emperor in history to be taken prisoner. This triumph was immortalized by Shapur in enormous rock reliefs in present-day Iran. At its zenith, the Sasanian Empire stretched from Mesopotamia across the entirety of Iran into Central Asia and parts of Arabia. Ctesiphon, the capital located on the Tigris River, was one of the largest cities of the ancient world, and the arch of the Sasanian palace, known as the Tak Kasra, boasted the largest brick arch of the ancient world, remnants of which still stand in Iraq today. Culturally, the Sasanian Empire experienced an extraordinary flourishing. Zoroastrianism became the state religion. Priestly structures were formalized, and religious texts were codified. The sacred book of Zoroastrianism, the Avesta, was compiled in its canonical form during the Sasanian period, marking a significant moment in the preservation of Iranian spiritual heritage. A vast collection of religious hymns, prayers, ritual prescriptions, and theological texts emerged during this period, though only a fraction survived the Mongol invasion and the subsequent Islamization of the region. Zoroastrianism, one of the oldest living religions in the world, endured the Islamic conquest as a minority faith. Today, the largest Zoroastrian communities outside of Iran are found in India, where they are known as Parsis. These individuals are descendants of refugees who left their homeland in order to preserve their religion following the Arab conquest. During the Sasanian rule, other religions also flourished, including Christianity in its Nestorian and Syrian forms, Manichaeism, and Buddhism, particularly in the eastern parts of the empire. Sasanian scholars played a crucial role in translating Greek works into Middle Persian, thereby contributing significantly to the preservation and transmission of ancient knowledge. The school of Gondishapur, located in what is now southwestern Iran, became one of the most important scientific centers of late antiquity and the early Middle Ages. It was a remarkable place where Greek, Indian, and Persian medicine and philosophy converged. Physicians from Gondishapur later treated the first Abbasid caliphs in Baghdad, effectively carrying their knowledge into the new Islamic capital, thereby ensuring that the Sasanian legacy directly influenced the Islamic Golden Age. The school of Gondishapur emerged as a beacon of scientific achievement during this transformative period. However, the Sasanian Empire met its end in the first half of the 7th century after Christ, weakened by decades of warfare against the Byzantine Empire and plagued by internal power struggles. This internal strife left the empire economically drained as the Arab armies of early Islam began to breach its borders. The Arab conquest of Iran in the year 63 and 64 after Christ stands as one of the most pivotal events in Iranian history. Understanding why the Sasanian Empire collapsed so swiftly is vital. It was not merely military superiority that allowed the Arabs to triumph. The Sasanian Empire was already significantly weakened by years of conflict with Byzantium. Within less than 20 years, the forces of the early Islamic caliphs dismantled the Sasanian Empire, which had endured for over 4 centuries. The decisive battles occurred at Qadisiyah in the year 636 or 637, and at Nihawand in the year 642. The last Sasanian monarch, Yazdegerd II, fled further east and was ultimately murdered in the year 651 at Merv. The Arab conquest marked not only a political and military upheaval, but also the beginning of a profound religious and cultural transformation that would last for centuries to come. The Islamization of Iran was not a rapid or violent process. Rather, it was a gradual transformation that unfolded over several centuries. Initially, many Iranians retained their Zoroastrian faith, and Islamic law provided fundamental protections for Zoroastrians, much like it did for Jews and Christians. However, economic incentives, social mobility, and the slow cultural shift led to the conversion of the vast majority of the Iranian population to Islam over generations. From the very beginning, Iranian scholars, scribes, and administrators played a crucial role in the administration of the Islamic Caliphate. The famous saying of Al-Subiyya, a literary movement that emphasized the cultural equivalence and even superiority of Persians over Arabs, reflects how confidently Iranian intellectuals defended their own traditions while outwardly adapting to the Islamic ruling structures. The Persian language, which unlike other conquered cultures was not supplanted by Arabic, experienced a cultural renaissance starting in the 9th and 10th centuries. During this period, New Persian emerged as a literary language, a direct successor to the Middle Persian of the Sasanian era, now written in Arabic script yet distinctly Iranian in its grammar and vocabulary. The poet Rudaki, often regarded as the father of Persian poetry, lived and wrote in the 9th and 10th centuries at the court of the Samanids in Bukhara. His work marks the beginning of classical Persian poetry, a tradition that would produce one of the richest literatures in the world over the centuries and across various dynasties. This era also saw the rise of Persian poets, philosophers, and scientists who created some of the most significant works of Islamic civilization. Although the transition to Islam was prompted by foreign domination, the adaptation and creative response were genuinely of Iranian origin. Chapter 9: The Persian Golden Age: Science, Poetry, and Philosophy. The period from the 9th to the 13th century was a golden age for Iranian culture in many respects, extending far beyond Iran and shaping the entire Islamic world. During this time, influential figures emerged whose impact resonates to this day. What makes this period so extraordinary is not only the quality of individual scholars and poets, but also the institutional infrastructure that facilitated their work. A highly expressive written language, well-organized traditions of scholarship, courts that promoted knowledge and art as status symbols, and trade routes that enabled the exchange of ideas across continents all contributed to this flourishing of culture. Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, a distinguished mathematician and astronomer hailing from what is now Uzbekistan, authored significant works on algebra and arithmetic in Arabic, from which the term algebra is derived. His seminal work, the Kitab al-Muhabba al-Jabra wa al-Muhabala, not only provided the algebraic nomenclature but also introduced a systematic method for solving equations through manipulation on both sides, a fundamental principle that remains the cornerstone of mathematics education worldwide today. The Latinized version of his name endures in the modern term algorithm. Abu Ali ibn Sina, known in the Western world as Avicenna, was born near Bukhara in present-day Uzbekistan. He composed his renowned canon of medicine in both Arabic and Persian, which served as a comprehensive medical handbook that was taught in European universities until the 17th century. Additionally, he produced a philosophical masterpiece that intertwined Aristotelian thought with Islamic teachings. Omar Khayyam from Nishapur was not only the celebrated poet behind the famous Rubaiyat, a collection of quatrains reflecting on transience, pleasure, and beauty that gained worldwide fame through Edward Fitzgerald's English translation in the 19th century. But he was also a notable mathematician who solved cubic equations and devised a calendar more accurate than the contemporary Gregorian calendar. Lastly, we have Jalal ad-Din Rumi, born in Balkh and who passed away in Konya. He was a Persian poet and Sufi mystic whose work, the Masnavi, is regarded as one of the greatest literary achievements in world literature and continues to be widely read in translations across the globe. These scholars and poets thrived in a cultural context characterized by unique attributes. Persian emerged as the preferred language of culture, not only in Iran but across a vast region extending from Central Asia to India. Courts in Bukhara, Samarkand, Delhi, and Istanbul nurtured Persian literature and attracted Persian-speaking poets. This extensive cultural influence elucidates why the Persian Golden Age had such a disproportionately significant impact on global culture. As European scholars during the Middle Ages began translating Arabic and Persian scientific texts, Iranian knowledge flowed into the emerging universities of Europe. Works in medicine by Avicenna, mathematics by al-Khwarizmi, and astronomy by Omar Khayyam laid the foundational stones upon which the European Renaissance was constructed. This intellectual movement was not confined to a single nation, but left its mark across an entire continent. These scholars and poets operated within a cultural milieu where libraries housed thousands of manuscripts, rulers employed scholars as court intellectuals, and the Silk Road facilitated a continuous exchange of ideas from China, India, the Arab world, and Europe. The Persian-speaking cultural domain of the Middle Ages extended from Anatolia to India, serving as the intellectual heartbeat of the Islamic world. Chapter 10: The Mongol Invasion, Catastrophe, and Cultural Renewal. The Mongol invasion of the 13th century. The 13th century stands as one of the most traumatic events in Iranian history, marking one of the largest demographic catastrophes in the annals of humanity. It is crucial to grasp the full extent of this calamity. This was not merely a defeat in battle or the loss of territory. Rather, it involved the systematic annihilation of urban civilizations, the destruction of irrigation systems that had been vital for food supply for millennia, and staggering population losses that left certain regions struggling to recover for centuries. The Mongol invasion commenced in the year 1219, initiated by Genghis Khan's campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire. This military action was triggered after a Mongolian trade caravan was attacked on the orders of the Khwarezmian governor of Otra, an incident that resulted in the death of Mongolian envoys. This event stands as one of the most consequential misunderstandings or deliberate provocations in history. Genghis Khan's response did not merely target the Khwarezmian Empire. It altered the demographic and geographic landscape of much of Asia for centuries, particularly affecting vast areas of Central Asia and northeastern Iran that were under its influence at the time. What ensued was a wave of destruction that was unparalleled in its systematic approach and scale. The city of Nishapur, once a cultural hub with a population that may have reached 1 million, was completely obliterated in 1221, with its inhabitants slaughtered and its irrigation systems destroyed. Merv, Balkh, and Ray experienced the same grim fate. Historians estimate that population losses in Iran could reach as high as 70% in some areas. The ancient irrigation systems, which had formed the backbone of Iranian agriculture, were largely never fully restored, leading to long-term demographic and economic repercussions. Yet, the narrative of Iran does not conclude here. Much like during the Arab conquest, an extraordinary cultural resilience emerged. The Mongols, who laid waste to Iran, ultimately became Iranianized themselves. The Ilkhanate, the Mongolian rulers of Iran, adopted the Persian language, embraced Islam, and inherited the administrative traditions of Persia within just 2 generations. Their court in Tabriz became a vibrant center of Persian art and science. The Ilkhanate actively promoted manuscript painting, historical writing, and architecture. Rashid al-Din Fadlallah, a physician and the vizier under the Ilkhan Ghazan, authored the first comprehensive world history known as the Jami al-Tawarikh, a work of astonishing breadth and ambition. Following the decline of the Ilkhanate and yet another wave of devastation wrought by Timur in the late 14th century, a slow cultural reconstruction began, which would eventually lead to a renaissance in Persian manuscript painting and architecture during the Timurid period. Chapter 11: The Safavids and the Birth of Modern Iran. The Safavid Empire, which emerged in the early 16th century, the 16th century marked a pivotal moment in the history of Iran, serving as the foundation for the modern nation we recognize today. It established territorial boundaries that closely resembled those of contemporary Iran. Moreover, it elevated Shia Islam to the position of the dominant religion, a status that continues to shape Iran's religious identity to this day. This era also revitalized the Persian language and culture, providing them with robust state support after centuries of foreign domination. At the heart of this transformation was Shah Ismail I, the founder of the Safavid dynasty, who stands out as one of the most charismatic and enigmatic figures in Iranian history. A young man of Turkmen and Persian descent, he rallied his followers as a religious leader, molding them into fervent warriors who believed themselves invincible in combat for his cause. Under the pseudonym Khatay, he composed poetry in Azerbaijani Turkish, portraying himself as divinely sanctioned or even godlike. However, this hubris was shattered during the catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Chaldiran against the Ottoman Empire's advanced firearms. Upon entering Tabriz, Shah Ismail declared Twelver Shia Islam the state religion of his new empire. This decision had profound implications. Domestically, it led to a sweeping religious transformation within Iranian society, as Shia scholars were brought in from various parts of the Islamic world. Meanwhile, Zoroastrian and Sunni populations faced increasing pressure. Internationally, this shift fostered a lasting enmity with the Sunni Ottoman Empire, which posed an existential threat to the newly established state. The decisive defeat of Shah Ismail I at the Battle of Chowdhuran in the year 1514 revealed the military limitations of the nascent empire, necessitating reforms and strengthening efforts. The Safavid Empire reached its zenith under Shah Abbasi, known as Abbas the Great, who ruled from the year 1601 until 1629. He relocated the capital to Isfahan, transforming it into one of the most magnificent cities in the world. Shah Abbas not only commissioned the construction of mosques and palaces, but also undertook a comprehensive urban redesign. He envisioned wide boulevards, caravanserais, bridges spanning the Zayandi River, lush gardens, and bustling bazaars. Furthermore, he settled Armenian Christians from present-day Azerbaijan in a designated neighborhood called New Julfa, leveraging their renowned expertise in silk and carpet trade to bolster Isfahan's economy. Under his reign, Isfahan flourished as a vital hub of international commerce, attracting Venetian merchants, Jesuit missionaries, and Ottoman ambassadors. The Naji-e-Jahan Square, surrounded by the Imam Mosque adorned with its turquoise tiles, the Ali Kapul Palace, and the Sheikh Lotfallah Mosque, remains one of the most stunning urban ensembles in the history of humanity. This architectural marvel continues to draw admiration, representing the pinnacle of Safavid achievement and the vibrant cultural legacy of Iran. Abbas the Great also modernized the military by incorporating firearms and hiring English military advisors. He established robust trade relations with European powers, transforming Isfahan into a vital hub of Eurasian trade routes. It was during this period that the saying Isfahan is half the world emerged, reflecting the city's significance. However, the decline of the Safavid Empire came swiftly and unexpectedly, much like the demise of many great empires throughout history. The last Safavid rulers were weak and ineffectual, unable to manage internal strife or withstand external threats. A rebellion by the Afghan Ghilzai tribes, who had long been vassals of the Safavids, became the catalyst for the empire's downfall. An army led by Mahmud of Afghanistan besieged Isfahan, the capital, until it capitulated due to starvation. Shah Sultan Hussein surrendered personally, handing over his crown to the Afghan leader. The collapse of the Safavid Empire was rapid and unforeseen. The combination of weak leadership, religious fanaticism, and economic exhaustion allowed an Afghan tribal coalition to invade Isfahan, effectively ending the empire. The subsequent period was marked by political instability and power struggles among various claimants to the throne. Out of this chaos emerged Nadir Shah, one of the most remarkable military figures in Iranian history. Nadir, the son of a humble man from the Afshar tribe in Khorasan, rose from mercenary leader to general and ultimately to Shah. He was a military genius, surpassing his contemporaries in audacity and speed, yet he proved to be a disastrous statesman, leaving no system behind that could function without him. In a bold campaign in the year 1739, Nadir crossed the Indus River, decisively defeating the Mughal forces at the Battle of Karnal and looting Delhi. He returned to Iran with the Koh-i-Noor diamond and the Peacock throne, both symbols of Mughal power, which briefly made Iran the wealthiest country in the world. However, Nadir Shah's reign became increasingly marked by paranoia, cruelty, and economic exploitation. He was assassinated by his own officers in the year 1747. Following another phase of instability, the Qajar dynasty took control of Iran and ruled until 1925. The Qajar era was characterized by profound crises and painful confrontations with expanding European powers. Russia in the north and Great Britain in the south exerted constant pressure on Iran. In two disastrous wars against Russia, Iran was forced to cede significant territories in the present-day Caucasus through the treaties of Gulistan in 1813 and Turkmenshay in 1828. These included areas that are now part of Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. The Treaty of Turkmenshay remains a symbol of national humiliation in the Iranian collective memory, comparable to the Opium Wars for China. He granted Russian citizens extraterritorial rights in Iran, meaning they could not be held accountable in Iranian courts. This privilege was later extended to all European powers, fundamentally undermining Iranian sovereignty, including in present-day Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. Simultaneously, economic sovereignty eroded through trade agreements and concessions that granted foreign entrepreneurs significant privileges. A notorious example was the tobacco concession of 1990, which gave a British company a monopoly over the cultivation, sale, and export of tobacco throughout Iran. This led to a nationwide boycott and was subsequently revoked following a fatwa issued by a leading Shia scholar. This incident stands as an early demonstration of the power of religious authority in Iranian politics, which often clashed with the interests of foreign entrepreneurs. Chapter 13, The Constitutional Revolution, Reza, and Modernization. From the humiliation and weaknesses of the Qajar era, a powerful reform movement emerged in the early 20th century. This movement was propelled by a new Iranian intelligentsia that had studied in Europe, merchants suffering from economic liberalization, and reform-minded clerics who recognized that the existing order was leading the country into dependency. This growing discontent culminated in the Constitutional Revolution of 1905. A coalition of merchants, intellectuals, clerics, and urban middle classes compelled the weakened Qajar Shah to introduce a constitution and an elected parliament known as the Majlis. With this, Iran became one of the first countries in the Middle East and Asia to establish a constitutional monarchy. The Constitution of 1906 represented a genuine advancement. However, its implementation was threatened from the outset by the resistance of conservative clerics, pressure from foreign powers, and the weakness of the central government. In 1907, Russia and Britain divided Iran into spheres of influence through the Anglo-Russian Convention. The northern part fell under Russian influence, while the south came under British control, leaving a neutral zone in between. Iran itself was not even consulted about this agreement, which was not an isolated incident, but rather part of a systematic pattern of colonial great power politics that treated smaller nations as mere pawns. This experience profoundly shaped Iranian consciousness, fostering a deep-seated mistrust of foreign interference, a heightened sensitivity to violations of national sovereignty, and an enduring quest for economic and political independence. All these sentiments can be traced back to the humiliating decades of the early 20th century. The Secret Convention of 1907, which divided Iran into spheres of influence, severely damaged hopes for full sovereignty. After the conclusion of the First World War, which plunged Iran into chaos and widespread hunger, Reza Khan, an officer of the Persian Cossack Brigade, seized effective power in a coup. In the year 1925, he deposed the last Qajar king and crowned himself as Reza Pahlavi, thereby establishing a new dynasty. Reza pursued an ambitious modernization policy, drawing inspiration from the reforms of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk in Turkey. He undertook extensive infrastructure projects, constructing railways, roads, and factories, and founded Tehran University. He also sent numerous scholarship students to Europe for their studies and fundamentally reformed the legal system. The new civil law system was modeled after French law, effectively replacing Islamic law as the sole basis for jurisprudence. In a significant move in 1935, he replaced the Arabic-influenced name Persia with Iran, which translates to "land of the Aryans" in the Persian language. This change served to remind the Iranian people of their Indo-Iranian heritage. This renaming was part of a broader nationalist reorientation that emphasized pre-Islamic Iranian traditions. Reza Khan abolished tribal and religious privileges, replacing them with a unified civil law. He also introduced mandatory modern clothing and banned the veil for women in public, a profound intervention that many religious women perceived as a humiliation. His style of governance increasingly took on an authoritarian nature. Dissent was not tolerated, and press freedom was severely restricted. The situation escalated to the point where British and Soviet troops, who had occupied Iran for strategic reasons, forced Reza to abdicate. His young son, Mohammad Reza, ascended to the throne. The reign of Mohammad Reza Shah was marked by a deep contradiction that ultimately led to his downfall. He aimed to modernize Iran but was unwilling to relinquish control. The most dramatic episode during this period was the conflict surrounding the nationalization of the Iranian oil industry. Since 1913, the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, a British enterprise, had de facto control over Iran's most vital source of revenue, and the terms of the agreement were deeply unjust from the Iranian perspective. Iran received only a tiny fraction of the profits while Britain reaped substantial rewards. In 1951, Mohammad Mossadegh, a nationalist politician from the aristocracy and a passionate Democrat, was elected prime minister. He nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, becoming the most prominent figure in Iranian political life. Time magazine named him Man of the Year in 1951. Internationally, he was celebrated as a symbol of anti-colonial nationalism. Within Iran, however, he was a polarizing figure, adored by nationalists and Democrats while feared by religious conservatives and the Shah. In response to Mossadegh's actions, Britain imposed an economic boycott that severely impacted Iran. Under President Dwight D. Eisenhower, the United States, led by CIA Director Allen Dulles, harbored deep fears of a communist takeover in Iran. In response to these anxieties, the USA agreed to a request from Britain to assist in the overthrow of Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. In August of 1953, the CIA, operating under the codename Operation Ajax, collaborated with the British counterpart known as Operation Boot to orchestrate a coup. Paid provocateurs incited riots. Military generals were bribed, and ultimately, the military declared a state of emergency. Mossadegh was arrested, tried, and sentenced to house arrest, where he remained until his death in 1967. As a result of this coup, the Shah of Iran returned from exile and ruled the country with increasingly authoritarian measures, bolstered by substantial American support. He established the feared secret police known as SAVAK, which pursued and tortured political opponents. Simultaneously, the Shah embarked on a campaign of modernization that sought to transform Iran economically and infrastructurally. The so-called White Revolution of 1963 included a series of reforms, such as land redistribution that dismantled large estates, granting women the right to vote, and launching a literacy program aimed at rural populations. These sweeping reforms, however, directly threatened the interests of traditional elites, including large landowners and clerics, who felt their religious foundations were under siege. The resistance from the clergy, led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, culminated in uprisings in 1963 that were met with brutal suppression. Khomeini was arrested and ultimately forced into exile. Nevertheless, the underlying contradiction between modernization and political repression, along with the tension between Western lifestyles and Iranian traditions, remained unresolved. This growing discontent coalesced into a powerful force that would eventually manifest in the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Chapter 15: The Islamic Revolution and Present-Day Iran. The Islamic Revolution of 1979 stands as one of the most consequential political events of the 20th century. Its dynamics, causes, and repercussions continue to be a central focus of political science and historical research. This revolution was not the product of a single class or ideology. Rather, it represented a broad coalition of religious conservatives, nationalist leftists, communists, Islamists, and simply discontented citizens, all united by a common desire to remove the Shah from power. The intellectual and spiritual leadership of the revolution was assumed by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a Shia cleric who had been living in exile since 1964, most recently in France. Khomeini had developed the concept of Velayat-e-Faqih, or the rule of the Islamic jurist. According to this theory, until the return of the 12th Imam, who is considered to be an occultation in Shia belief, a supreme Islamic jurist should exercise political and religious authority. In February of 1979, Khomeini returned to Tehran, greeted by millions of enthusiastic supporters. The images of his return have become some of the most iconic representations of the 20th century. He assumed leadership of the revolution, and within a matter of months, a new constitution was drafted and approved through a referendum, institutionalizing the concept of Velayat-e-Faqih, or the rule of the Islamic jurist. In November of 1979, student revolutionaries seized the American embassy in Tehran, taking 52 diplomats hostage for a staggering 444 days. This event has since poisoned Iranian-American relations, casting a long shadow over diplomatic interactions that continue to this day. The Islamic Republic of Iran was declared, and a new constitution was enacted, solidifying the role of the supreme jurist as a central authority in the new political framework. However, the initial coalition of revolutionaries quickly fractured. Nationalists, leftists, and other non-Islamist forces were systematically excluded from the new power structure and faced persecution. The siege of the American embassy marked a significant turning point as the Revolutionary Guards took control, further entrenching the ideological divide. From 1980 to 1988, Iran engaged in a devastating war against Iraq, led by Saddam Hussein, who had received support from both Western and Arab nations. This brutal conflict, which involved the use of chemical weapons by Iraq against Iranian troops and civilians, resulted in hundreds of thousands of fatalities and concluded with a status quo ante that left no clear victor. The war profoundly affected an entire generation of Iranians, leaving behind deep psychological and societal scars. Simultaneously, the conflict served to solidify the revolutionary regime, as the presence of an external enemy complicated internal dissent and fostered a sense of unity among the population. The war's toll was immense, and its conclusion did not bring about the peace many had hoped for. Khomeini passed away in 1989, and Ali Khamenei succeeded him as the supreme leader. Since that time, Iran has found itself in a continuous state of tension between the religious doctrine of the state and the desire of significant segments of the population for greater political freedom, economic development, and social openness. The reform movement of the late 1990s under President Mohammad Khatami, who was elected with an overwhelming majority of over 70% of the votes, aimed for a policy of openness, cultural dialogue, and press freedom. This movement demonstrated a strong yearning for change among a substantial portion of the Iranian populace. However, Khatami's efforts were met with resistance from the conservative establishment, leading to a renewed clampdown on the press and the arrest of reformists. The Green Movement of 2009, along with the protests in 2019 and 2022, are all expressions of an unresolved conflict between a theocratic system and a young, urbanized, and well-educated population that possesses different visions for the future than those held by the revolutionary founders. The history of Iran is, to be clear, far from over. It is vibrant, it is contradictory, and it deserves far more attention than it typically receives in Western media. Those who view Iran solely through the lens of news reports, focusing on the nuclear dispute, sanctions, or the Revolutionary Guards, miss out on a nation with a rich tapestry of over 5,000 years of history. This is a country endowed with one of the world's most illustrious literary traditions, inhabited by a young and deeply ambivalent population that is both proud of its cultural heritage and yearning for a different future. The narrative of Iran is characterized by cycles of rise, flourishing, destruction, and rebirth, tracing back from Cyrus the Great through the Achaemenids and the Sassanids, encompassing the Arab conquest and the Islamic Golden Age, and extending to the Mongol catastrophe and the Safavid resurgence, culminating in the Islamic Revolution and its aftermath. Time and again, Iran has demonstrated a remarkable ability to fundamentally reinvent itself while remaining true to its identity. This resilience is perhaps the most striking feature of this ancient civilization, not just its longevity, but its capacity to endure and adapt. The Green Movement of 2009, during which millions of Iranians took to the streets in response to the controversial re-election of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, revealed the depth of societal discontent. Similarly, the protests of 2019 and 2022, sparked by rising fuel prices and the tragic death of the Kurdish Iranian woman Gina Mahsa Amini while in police custody, underscored the ongoing societal conflict. The rallying cry of "Women, Life, Freedom" highlighted that the struggle between state ideology and the will of the people has not diminished, rather, it has intensified. As we ponder the future trajectory of Iran's history, it remains uncertain. However, given the profound depth and resilience of the civilization, it would be unwise to dismiss its potential for continued evolution and transformation.